Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Bienvenue à la réunion numéro 123 du Comité permanent de l'accès à l'information, de la protection des renseignements personnels et de l'éthique. Avant de commencer, j'aimerais demander à tous.
On access to information, privacy, and ethics. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear the interpreter? Yes? Okay, fine. Before starting the meeting, I would like to ask all members to check the cards on the table in order to know the directives to prevent acoustic accidents.
And keep in mind what's been the measures that have been put in place to protect the health of all participants, including the interpreters.
Make sure, again, that if you're not using your earpiece, that it's the placeholder that's clearly signaled on the desk. So we are resuming in committee business. As members may recall, we suspended last Thursday on a motion that was presented, and we suspended because of question period. So we're resuming on that motion. I do have a speakers list. When we left, I had Mr. Housefather was speaking. He moved the motion, which now moves to Mr. Baines. I see Mr. Longfield is here as well, followed by Mr. Fisher. Et après ça, Monsieur Désolé, je vous dis bienvenue au comité.
And apologies. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Villemur. Is in the fourth spot on the speaking list for today, just so you know.
Has her hand up, so we'll put her on the list. And we are going to start resuming debate on the motion.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to seek clarification, if that's okay, please.
Go ahead, seeking clarification.
So just on, so I know that Mr. Housefather was on the list when the meeting suspended last time, and he had moved a motion. So is it in the standing orders that once you move a motion that you lose the floor after the?
It's a generally accepted practice that if a motion is moved, that the member would give up the floor, and so that would go next to Mr. Baines. If Mr. Housefather, and I see him on Zoom there, if he wants to put his name back on the list, then he would have the right to do that and indicate that clearly to me as well. So far, the list that I have, and I'll repeat this, is Mr. Baines, Longfield, Fisher, Monsieur Villemur, and then did your hand go up just to ask that question, or?
Add to the list
okay,
as well.
so Mr.
I have a question too. Sorry, Chair.
Go ahead. Is it a question for clarification or on a point of order?
No, it's not a point of order.
Okay.
It's just a really quick question. Given how late we're starting, I'm just wondering what our resources are in terms of how long.
As it stands right now, we have 2 hours from the start of the meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
you.
you.
I may request more time from the clerk, depending on where we're getting. Okay. So I have Mr. Baines on the list. Mr. Baines, go ahead on the motion, please. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And on that motion, so just wanted to continue some of the debate that we heard last time on this motion. I think one of the challenges we did here was that the commissioner had indicated that the information that he learned in the news article was new to him and that he would look into it, and that turned into members stating that this is a new investigation, and then reports of that matter happened. So it's easy to sort of see how things can grow into a lot bigger than they are, and I understand, we all see, we know the impacts of social media, and one of the big challenges again here is, bringing people forward, people from, general professional workplaces to come and answer questions here. Again, I believe other colleagues stated that this isn't a courtroom, and sometimes it can be viewed like one, and some of these comments or questions that arise here ultimately put implications on people when, you know, they're frankly doing their jobs. And then they're, as a result, met with a barrage of social media attacks, you know, people's names put in the forefront. And I think that's some of the big challenges that we have when we're trying to bring people forward. I believe the commissioner did indicate he would look into the matter, and we've said this before, we should let those processes follow course and allow for the commissioner to, if there's a complaint forward, look into the new information and come back to us with whatever those investigations or processes that take place through their work, the Office of the Commissioner's work, and come back with a fulsome report, and we can again look at that. But to have, you know, members from the professional community coming here and sometimes often being, and we respect the tough questions that are asked of people, of course, but put in a light where those questions could imply that they've done some wrongdoing in advance of knowing all of the information. That is sometimes a challenge, and we've seen that. We've seen documents being asked for which have resulted in a lot of, we've seen in other committees where we've asked for a number of documents to be presented and nothing really comes of it. So I think that if we're going to move forward, we should have all of the information that is looked at by the Ethics Commissioner, and we know that he does a thorough job. We've heard from him a number of times to inform the committee of how that work is done, what the processes are, and what the results from those processes are reported to us here, and where we can formulate better questions and have a strong understanding of what took place. You know, when we take sometimes the extraordinary step of, you know, dragging people into extra meetings, I think that has resulted in a lot of extra discussion here that sometimes that time could be used in a better way. And I think if members have concerns, and we've seen letters written to the Office of the Commissioner in the past, and maybe put forward some of those questions in those letters, in a complaint, and then have the thorough details of those questions be worked out through the office and come back to us and report back on what we're looking at. So again, I think we should be careful on, you know, who we're bringing in front of camera, in front of Canadians to ask the questions that we want to, without impacting their personal lives in a negative way, quite frankly, when they may have even nothing to do with any wrongdoing. Sometimes the questions that we put forward automatically just put these people in a bad light just for bringing them in here before committee. So I think that is some big consideration that we should have, and I think we need to make those considerations before we look at a motion like this. Thank you.
Mr. Longfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you recognizing me and giving me the floor. The last meeting, you were wondering who I was. I was kind of surprised because we've sat across from each other for 8.5 years. But hey, it's good to finally get to work together. I don't think we've ever been on a committee together, and particularly one where you're chairing is super to be part of. You know, I'm looking at this as a process question as well. That quite often what I see in the House is the members of Parliament's roles getting confused, that we are here to ask questions on behalf of Canadians, but we aren't a judge and jury over the activities within departments of governments. We advise departments. We give them guidance and we give them laws to work within. But really, it's up to the professionals in our civil service to conduct themselves in the way that befits the roles that they play. We also don't ask them to be politicians, and they're very good at not being partisan. They're very good at providing us the support that we need as the politicians in the room. So just how this works in terms of the committee dragging regular Canadians before our committee in order to get social media clips. I understand this meeting's not in camera, so it's when the cameras are rolling, I think we have to respect Canadians that are coming in front of us and the positions that we're putting them in, to look at what they've what they've heard, but how it relates to policies that we develop from our side. I think, just to be honest, I think what we're looking at here is something that came through the media. It's the global story that is put out there as speculation. There's really no evidence that Minister Boissonnault is the person mentioned in the text. In fact, the minister was clear that he wasn't the person in the text conversation. And the person that sent the text, Mr. Anderson, was also quoted as saying that the minister wasn't the person referenced in the text. So I think the ethics commissioner reviews the information they have in a factual way and in a way that is nonpartisan. And I think we have to be able to take them at the work with the job that they do. The Gailey group is quoted in the article saying that they've never had contact with the minister. And of course, they didn't because the minister had ceased to have a role in the operations of the company that's in question more than a year after or before any of this happened. He was elected and he's serving the government of Canada. And of course, the ethics commissioner will be looking at how that is done. And we all have to do our disclosure statements. I've just finished my disclosure statement. It's an annual thing we have to do. Any changes in our marital status, any changes in whether we've bought stocks or if we have interest in any of the businesses that we might be dealing with. I was chairing the Science and Research Committee, and I'm now a master's student, and I saw myself having an issue there. So I contacted the ethics commissioner and said, graduate students are asking for more money. I'm a graduate student. I'm acting as a chair of a Science and Research Committee. So I've stepped down as the chair of that committee in order to make sure that there's no perceived conflicts. And I think all of us do that as part of what we face on a day-to-day basis, that we make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a bad position, and that regardless of the party, we're all members of parliament and we all know the duties that we have under the act that we serve. It's been noted also that back on September 8th, Minister Boissonnault was in Vancouver attending a cabinet retreat, and we know that this was a day that was especially hectic because it was the day that Queen Elizabeth passed away. God rest her soul. Now, long live the King. The Conservatives are expecting us to believe that sometime during that day, sometime during the retreat meetings, somewhere the ministers, that when they had their phones, they don't have their phones during the cabinet meeting, that somehow that Minister Boissonnault was stepping in and out to take phone calls about business that he had resigned from a year earlier. So with all the things going on, this would not have been on Minister Boissonnault's mind. But again, we're not the judge and jury. That's up to the ethics commissioner to take a look at and see whether any thing was being done in a way that wasn't ethical. It's really, really hard to believe that Minister Boissonnault had turned over his phone records to this committee, and it shows no phone calls happening during this period of time in question. We've got evidence as if we were acting as a judge and jury. But we sat through Mr. Cooper going through the fanciful bit of conjecture that it must have been the minister because of the references to Eastern Standard Time, even though the minister was on Pacific Time. We're now hearing him do some kind of a wild conspiracy theory in the House, accusing the minister of having some secret burner phone which is totally ridiculous. I don't think any honorable members are working with burner phones. We have our parliamentary phone that we use for our business. We have our personal phones that we use for personal and for fundraising. We separate out those two things, but we don't get burner phones. It's really for the cameras that a statement like that would be made. If you look at the actual evidence that we have from Minister Boissonneau's phone records from September 8th, 2022, it shows very clearly that the phone records that are there of calls between 11:02 a.m. Pacific times and 5:37 p.m. Pacific time. Mr. Chair, that covers entirely this time frame that Global News talks about in its coverage and the time frame that Mr. Cooper talked about at length during the minister's appearance. Under that time frame, everyone involved was supposed to be on a partner call at 12:30 Pacific time. Clearly, from this phone record, Minister Boissonneau was on no such call. Mr. Chair, here at the committee, Mr. Brock asked the minister to look at his phone records and provide them. The minister's now done that before the clerk has even sent him a formal request. There's nothing to hide here, Mr. Chair. I'm informed that Mr. Boissonneau has shared this with the Ethics Commissioner. Of course he would. And the Ethics Commissioner will look at this in due course and take that into an account, doing his job and the job that we trust him with. And it's not the job of the committee to try and do an investigation. That's why we have an ethics commissioner. So just reviewing, Mr. Chair, the minister was clear it wasn't him. He came to this committee and he was unequivocal on this, as virtually any answer I've seen at the committee reveals. He did not dodge, he didn't avoid questions, he did not give any clever comment or leave the room for doubt, any room for doubt. He said that this was not on him. So the Conservatives say that's not good enough. They need some kind of substantiation for what that denial means. And they say we need to be sure that we need to hear from Stephen Anderson. Well, we've heard from Stephen Anderson. He's quoted right in Global News articles saying that it was not Minister Boissonneau. They say they need to hear from the Gowie Group about this, but the Gowie Group has noted in the article saying they've never spoken to Mr. Boissonneau. So it seems the Conservatives are not willing to accept the Global News article at face value, a bit odd since it's the basis for their argument. So let's take a step back and look at the actual day. We know from public record that Minister Boissonneau was in Vancouver at the time. We also know this from these phone records. This is despite the fact that Mr. Cooper walked us through a long discussion about mountain time zones and eastern time zones. And even though the minister was in neither time zone at the time, Minister Boissonneau was in Vancouver at a cabinet retreat. Members know cabinet retreats consist of wall-to-wall meetings. Much of the day is taken up, that the ministers don't take their phones into those meetings. We don't take our phones into our caucus meetings. Those meetings are times when we are in camera and we have to make sure we're in camera. The RCMP makes sure that we haven't taken our phones in. And in fact, we have had caucus meetings where the RCMP has said somebody's inadvertently walked in with their phone or with their iWatch or with even the security buzzers. Anything that connects to Wi-Fi is checked through. So even if there was a hint that he might have walked in with the phone, the RCMP would have been on that and made sure that the phone wasn't in the room. So he didn't have access to a phone. This day would have also been particularly busy given the passing of Queen Elizabeth. And I know the cabinet would have been thinking, what does that mean in terms of governance of our country? And how do we respect the passing of the Queen but maintain governance? What does it mean in terms of the change of monarch? And I mean, she was with us for so long. And since I was born, she was our queen, and now she wasn't. And what does that mean? So that would have been the issue of the day, I'm sure, that would have been interrupting the cabinet discussions that might have been planned. it's a real stretch to think that the minister would then go, oh, wait a minute, I've got some business to conduct. So the Conservatives have heard this. They're still not convinced. The minister has now made additional effort to prove the negative. He's provided his phone records. He's provided the phone calls that are supposed to happen and shown that they're not there. And it's a certain point, Mr. Chair, that the holes in this Conservative theory is just, it needs to square with reality. It's obviously a story for social media. It's conjecture. It's biased and politically motivated. And it's really not the way that ethics is handled in the country, which is non-biased and is done by professionals that don't have a political stake in the game, which is why we have the office of the Ethics Commissioner, and they are continuing to do their job every day. When I did my submission, they actually came back to me and said, you missed something, and I had to resubmit. And the something I missed was whatever it was. I didn't think it was important, but they did. And so I resubmitted, and they came back and said, thank you for your prompt response. And you're now, we'll make your statements public. And all of that is done, as all of us know, every year. So I'm not prepared to drag regular Canadians before this committee in order to feed the story. I think we have to be fair to the Canadians that are witnesses here and treat them fairly as witnesses, and not bring them into the political melee when there shouldn't be a political melee in the first place. They can be working with the Ethics Commissioner, and I'm sure they will be if the Ethics Commissioner feels that's where they need to be. But clinging to this latest speculation, knowing full well that the Ethics Commissioner looked into the previous allegations against the minister, didn't find any cause for investigation, will continue to work on information as it becomes as it is presented, and phone records that came through our committee were presented, but they were also presented separately. Mr. Barrett wrote to the Ethics Commissioner, who is the neutral party, who is there to say whether or not there have been any violations in the Act. The Ethics Commissioner reviewed that letter and found no reason to look into things further. So it's politics. The Commissioner couldn't have been clearer in his testimony that said that the minister, and I quote, complied with the rules under the Act and the Code. He reiterated it in French. It appears that the minister has complied with the requirements of the Code and the Act with respect to matters relating to these companies, and therefore there is no need to proceed with a study. It's pretty clear. Now, the Conservatives will, of course, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. There must be somebody out there that's there must be some ulterior motives going on. We'll get up in the House. We'll say what we can say. We'll go to committee and try and get a story created. And it's funny how the story always coincides with the announcement of our budget. And instead of talking about our budget, or instead of talking about interest rates dropping last week, which was the story of the year, if not the last 5 years, that we're now getting into a point where interest rates are coming down, which is good news for Canadians. We have support in our budget, which is good news for Canadians. There could be some things around the budget that the Conservatives would want to talk about, maybe like the capital gains tax. That's being contentious within our ridings. I've got several calls from businesses in the ridings, and I've talked to them about capital gains. Instead of talking about that, we're creating some kind of a faux narrative here that there is a scandal that we have to talk about. Let's create a scandal. The Commissioner did what he would always do with the allegations. He said he would look at it, and he'd decide whether an investigation was warranted. And that's exactly what happened with Mr. Barrett's previous allegations about the minister. The Commissioner reported to the committee that there was no need to investigate. He suggested to us that he was satisfied with the information that he was able to obtain through his investigation, but suggesting that the Ethics Commissioner is not considering all the information is just not true. That's not how our Ethics Commissioner operates. Here's what the Ethics Commissioner actually said. I think it would be absolutely irresponsible to make a premature decision as to what we're going to do and how. All I can tell you is that we will look into it. The Ethics Commissioner is always on guard and looking at us and looking at how we conduct ourselves and making sure that we're doing our job in an ethical way. So, Mr. Chair, let's just allow the commissioner to continue to look into things. He'll look at this, he'll look at everything else that's going on. If he thinks there's a need to do an investigation, I'm sure he will. He doesn't need us to tell him he needs to do his job. He does his job every day, and he's public about what he does. He's transparent. He doesn't have a political stake in any of the games. He will report to us at the committee and to parliamentarians and to the public at large if there is something that needs to be brought forward as a result of his ongoing investigations. So I'm also informed that the minister has written to the commissioner and he's requested that he come to a conclusion on this whole matter as soon as possible, so we can continue to get on with the work of Parliament. Before we drag everyday Canadians before this committee to become fuel for the conservative rage machine, and I've seen that, we need to allow the commissioner to do his work and make a call about whether there's any substance to the allegations. You know, we had one of our witnesses came into one of the committees I was serving on, and I met her later, and she said, after the way she was treated by the Conservatives, she won't come to a parliamentary committee again, which is a terrible thing. We're not going to have her voice at the table, which was an expert voice that we relied on. But because of the way she was treated by the Conservatives at committee, she said, I'm not going through that again. I went home. I was upset. I was upset a week later. I was upset 2 weeks later. I was being treated like a criminal. And these are real people. They're people with families. They go back. They're proud to come to Ottawa to be in front of a parliamentary committee. It's one of those things that we see people coming to our committees every day. For these people, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to serve the country. And we need to keep that in mind when they're here, that they're honored to be here, and we have to honor them by treating them properly when they are here. And it's not asking them to cover things up. It's not asking them to act as if they're a spokesperson for a political party. It's there to share their expertise so the studies that we do have the right information so we can come to the right conclusions and recommendations for the government to consider. As members, we're experienced in this whole detailed process of how committees run and how the ethics commissioner operates and how elected officials interact. We go through the questionnaires about all our personal relationships with the ethics commissioner, our assets, our debts, our significant others' assets or debts, whether our kids are involved in anything. All of the professional experiences that we have goes to the ethics commissioner, and that's not something that the witnesses maybe even realize how much we do in terms of disclosure. As I said, I also had a business that I put on hold when I was elected. I stopped operating the business. A year later, I was asked whether the business was still not operating, and I confirmed that there was no operation. They actually asked me for the financials, and I said, I'll give you my last financials. But there was no financial activity after 2015 when I was elected. So I can't give you what I don't have, but here's what I do have. And that was the way that I disclosed to the ethics commissioner that I wasn't operating my business. Of course, they could look at Revenue Canada records. They could see whether I was not disclosing. There's ways that they do their job that I don't know their sausage machine, but I disclosed from my side what I knew was true, and then they have their ways of confirming whether it's true or not. We provide our documentation. The commissioner and their staff does what they do to make sure that the right questions are being asked, and also maintaining the confidentiality of going over the records. You know, and we're on camera right now, and I'm letting the public know that, yes, I was having to disclose things, but otherwise the commissioner will work with me on a confidential basis unless there's something that needs to become public. Then you have the conversations in some cases where they ask for follow-up questions. As I said, how long have you known that person for? How did you meet? How long was it that you were investing in something together? Has the value changed? Do you still have shares? What's your percentage of shares? All of the questions that they ask us. I mean, I had a change in my circumstance when my wife was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I was volunteering for Parkinson's Canada. And I asked the ethics commissioner, as a parliamentarian, what are the limits to me working as a volunteer for Parkinson's Canada? And they gave me 4 pages of what I can do and can't do. And lobbying the government is not something I should be doing. I'm not fundraising for them, but I'm working with Parkinson's Canada as a caregiver to a person with Parkinson's. And from my experience doing that, I'm actually organizing a day on the Hill this fall where we'll have senators, members from all parties, Parkinson Canada, Parkinson Strategy Canada will be there, researchers will be there. We'll have people coming in as clinicians, and we'll have hopefully some family health team members and people that have been diagnosed with Parkinson's. That's all within the agreements that I have with the ethics commissioner, that I will follow the guidelines that they gave me. And I do follow those guidelines, and I will be public about what I can be public about. And I will disclose to the ethics commissioner what I'm doing to make sure that I'm following the guidance that they've given me. So we know firsthand that the ethics commissioner does an incredibly thorough job, and he will inform us. He will continue to investigate us all as we're members of Parliament. And I have to say how disappointing it is to see the Conservatives falling over themselves to try and get this motion through, to try and create a story, to have a diversion from all the issues around the budget that should be the things that we're talking about. We've taken all these steps of dragging members to special meetings. We put this one in between other meetings and long votes and midnight sittings. And we have our regular meeting scheduled for tomorrow. So, I mean, what's this all about? It's not an urgent message, an urgent matter that has to come before the committee before tomorrow's meeting. I don't get it. I mean, I'm here. I'll continue to serve. I'll serve as a substitute as asked. I get to see all the different committees. I was just in the security committee while we were voting, and in between votes, they're doing a clause by clause study, and I was doing the clause by clause review. I mean, subbing in committees is a great chance to learn and to get to know each other. But this type of work is really outside of our normal work plan or our strategy that we develop as a committee. Vice chairs work with the committee chair to get a schedule together. We're outside that schedule now. I'm surprised that the Conservatives have jumped to the conclusions beginning with the SAG, but I think it's really just trying to turn up the lights, trying to get the cameras rolling, and remembering that all of this has been in front of the committee in terms of allegations and information that was provided to show that the allegations were really just grasping at straws. So, Mr. Chair, I just want to be clear that Mr. Barrett had every right to reach out to the commissioner. We all should do that, if not for ourselves. If we see something that we don't think is right, we should bring these issues to the commissioner as a matter of process. We should make sure that parliamentarians are being ethical in everything that they're doing. If members have concerns, we all know how to get in touch with the Ethics Commissioner's office. They're always very prompt at getting back. They're always very thorough with the information they give us. They always ask at the end of a conversation, is there anything else? Which is something that all of the offices we connect with will always, if it's the library, the House of Commons, they'll always say, is there anything else, sir? You've given me great information. Thank you. Yes, but is there anything else? They will always stay on top. So Mr. Barrett was doing his job, and I appreciate that. The ethics commissioner did his job, and I appreciate that. There's no social media clips in this. It's not letting the process play out for the cameras. It's really doing our job by involving the ethics commissioner when we need to. So instead of rushing to pass a motion here to have Mr. Boissonnault appear, the committee could be deciding their business. The minister has been appropriately questioned on this. The committee could get back to the business of the ethics committee, but we're continuing on. And so here we are. We found additional information since the time the motion was passed, and Mr. Boissonnault has given us that information and given it to the ethics commissioner. There's still an open phone line to the commissioner's office if there's anything else that comes up. But the minister has come. He's addressed us. He's talked to us publicly. He's answered the questions we've given him. And once again, we're jumping on a story to try and divert from talking about the budget. The 400,000 kids that will get school food programs as a result of what we're putting forward. Hopefully the Conservatives will support us on that work because it shouldn't be partisan. We're trying to help the young Canadians that are hungry when they're in school so that they can have food, so they can do their studying without wondering, when am I going to have my next meal? So looking into this and looking at where do we go from here, I really hope we can get the committee to get past this motion, to defeat the motion, and get back to the business of serving Canadians. So being honest about what's going on, I think if we turned off the cameras and got to work would be great. I had somebody ask me over the weekend, he said to me, how do you put up with the drama every day? You come from manufacturing. And I said, yeah, in manufacturing, we didn't have any cameras. We worked on problems. We had to figure out ways of automating equipment. We had to figure out ways of meeting production schedules. We had to figure out ways of onboarding employees. We didn't have cameras when we were doing our job. And sometimes I think that, Parliament, if we got away from trying to serve the media's interest and instead serving Canadians' interest, I think we would all be better for it. But there's no doubt that we're not coming at this with an open mind. This is a clearly partisan exercise that we're in the middle of. The conclusions that Mr. Cooper is making is showing us perfectly clearly that his arguments are really coming out of left field, that there is no basis in the arguments that he's putting forward. But we know that the ethics commissioner has already confirmed that and will continue to work with us and to confirm that we are being open by default and we are involving the ethics commissioner every step of the way. So I think I'm just about ready to go back to my tea, but I appreciate you giving me the chance to speak at the committee as an outsider from the committee. The committees I serve on, the Environment Committee, the Science Committee, I'm now a member of the Science Committee instead of being the chair. I'm trying to serve people through my background. I'm trying to do it in as nonpartisan way as I can. And I really, really hope we can see that starting to happen at the Ethics Committee where things shouldn't be partisan. They should be based on ethics and information. So, Mr. Chair, I'll give it back to you and to my colleagues. I look forward to seeing the conversation. I hope it becomes more positive. I hope we can get back to serving Canadians instead of trying to create diversions. And so thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me the time to speak today.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the member from Guelph for his words. I remember in 2014 I was a candidate and I was walking across the street and I remember meeting him and his wife on Wellington Street down towards Confed. Probably meant a lot more to me than it meant to him, but over the years, Lloyd, you've been a wonderful colleague. As I said on the last meeting, many wonderful colleagues on both sides of the House. I thought a lot about this over the weekend, and this is not something I usually do, is go home and think about what happened in committee, because I want to get home and go to events, Boys and Girls Club Day, or go, visit with constituents. But I thought about this a lot over the weekend in my comments that I was making. And it's nice to see you today, Luke. I haven't seen you at committee in some time. We did serve on health in the past. But I was thinking about some of the things I said at the last meeting. And to me, words matter. You know, in the House, during question period, someone said something about the Ethics Commissioner is re-investigating or reopening the investigation, of which there was no investigation. There was no investigation. The Ethics Commissioner did his work, said there's nothing to see here, didn't warrant opening an investigation. New article comes out, Mr. Barrett asks the Ethics Commissioner to take another look at it. He says, absolutely, I'll take another look at it. That's not the same as reopening. It's not the same as opening an investigation. And I was thinking about, you know, some of the comments that we made around the table on I think it was Thursday. It's almost like trying to scandal creation when you've got somebody who has done everything that the Ethics Commissioner has asked for, has done it. The Ethics Commissioner has looked at it and said, we're good. Like Lloyd said, oftentimes the Ethics Commissioner's office will come back and say, you're missing this one form, or you're missing this one bank account, or you're missing this one piece of paper, or did you mean to put this down? Before you make that public, before you sign off on those forms, before you sign off on the work that the Ethics Commissioner has looked at, you go over that with a fine-tooth comb. And he went over it. He went over all the information that was presented to him. And then, because he's the kind of quality guy that he is, when he heard new information and was asked by Mr. Barrett to take a look at new information, he said, of course, that's what I would do. He works on facts, but not speculation and not conjecture. Rene was here the other day, Thursday, and he said, you know, and I wish I had the piece of paper that I wrote down some of his points. He said, this committee's not a court. But some members of this committee want to act like this is a court. We want to bring someone forward, and we want to question regular, everyday business people in Canada. And I know what that looks like, and I know the vitriol that will bring upon them. I know the social media feedback that they'll get. We've all been here. Most of us have all been here for quite some time. We have a thick skin. We're used to being, you know, pillared in social media by people that don't necessarily agree with our points of view or our thoughts or the things that we say. But an everyday Canadian that has, you know, works in the business sector, being brought before a committee of Parliament is a daunting thing to have them go through. And I make no mistake, I guarantee you, those aren't going to be friendly questions. Those are going to be questions that, in my opinion, can border on mean-spiritedness. I've been 8.5 years going to committee, and I've seen some pretty horrible incidents. Not many that I saw that were as disappointing as last Thursday. But it's scandal creation, and I don't want to be a part of scandal creation. Hold someone to account for sure. Bring someone to committee, bring a minister to committee. You know, and I sat on national defense for 8 years. We had defense ministers coming every 2 or 3 weeks for 8 years, taking the hard questions. Sometimes it got a little fiery, but the minister's job is to work with committees and present to committees and be available to committees when requested or when demanded or when expected. And that's the nature of what we do here. But to bring, you know, and I think back to times when, you know, we see what happens to a regular Canadian when they're grilled by parliamentarians who are used to doing this. On the motion itself, you know, and again, this goes back to my comment about what was said in the House of Commons during question period last week, that even in the motion it says, considering opening another investigation. How can I vote for a motion that is factually incorrect? There is no, the Ethics Commissioner is not considering opening another investigation. There was no first investigation. There was the report to the Ethics Commissioner, filed by the Minister, approved by the Ethics Commissioner, and then the opportunity to take a look at what may or may not be new information. So, again, Mr. Chair, words matter. You know, Mr. Cooper, my friend Mr. Cooper, said at committee during his speech last week on Thursday, he was talking about the other Randy. And then he made a comment that he said, I know the other Randy's the minister. And Renee rightly said, we are not a court here. We are not in charge of our own facts, and we can't make our own statements that are patently false and misleading. And I find that to be something that I see an awful lot more of lately in the House of Commons and in committees. I'll go back to that comment I made, scandal creation. Everything has to be a scandal so that you can call it a scandal in the House of Commons for to push the envelope on what you want your messaging for your supporters to believe is the case. Then all of a sudden you get social media anger or frustration being sent your way saying, oh, you're full of scandals. It's scandals every day. Well, it's scandal creation, and it's really frustrating, and it's not fair, and it's below us as parliamentarians. I was out home on the weekend, and I heard from a few people that happened to chime in and watch a little bit of committee, and they said, is it really getting that bad in the House of Commons? And I would say it's absolutely getting that bad in the House of Commons. It's funny, you know, parliamentary privilege in the House of Commons allows us to say anything we want to say, but it doesn't allow someone can't call you out for not being honest and not telling the truth. And I'm thinking, you know, Mr. Couric spoke for, 4 hours one day on the parliamentary what's our parliamentary, the British Westminster, thank you. I think it felt like about 4 hours. Anyway, he gave us a history lesson on the Westminster parliamentary style, and it's getting to the point now where it's, we hear about politicians citing reasons why they're not going to run again. We've got one here in this committee, Pam Damoff, who's just not willing to take that hate any longer. We're studying the misinformation study, disinformation and malinformation study, which I think is super fascinating, but unfortunate that it's such a prevalent topic. It's really unfortunate that it is so prevalent in our world right now. We're seeing AI-developed videos that look real and are not real. And those are things that we could be talking about. I've watched many, many, many videos that people are making with AI that they probably think they're making because they're funny. NHL playoffs, you're seeing Connor McDavid, false videos of him saying things like, our goalie lost the game for us. Pretty provocative, pretty real-looking videos. Of course, he never said it. It's completely manufactured. And the public may know, may not know. I did hear someone say, oh my God, did you see that video? Why would Connor McDavid say something like that about his goalie? He didn't say it. It's not true. It's AI. The technology out there right now can make us all news broadcasters and journalists, and it's a scary situation. When I was on National Defense, someone sent me a video that said that, and the video looked so real, and the news broadcast looked so real, it said something along the lines that Russia had attacked an American ship. It obviously wasn't true, but it was shared something like 3,000 or 4,000 times on Facebook. This video from an not a real news source, but one that looked pretty slick. You could tell there was money behind it. Absolutely incredible what we're seeing today. So the misinformation, disinformation, malinformation study is super important. And I know Renee is a big supporter of getting back to that. I said the other day, Mr. Chair, something I thought you said that was really funny when you welcomed me in. You said, "Welcome to the Shooting Fish in a Barrel Committee." And that's, you know, if it's the nature of the committee, so be it. The nature of the committee, so be it. Mr. Chair is in the background refuting what I'm saying here, but fair point, Mr. Chair, fair point. So I would suggest that what we should do, same thing I suggested Thursday, is that we should, exactly what the Ethics Commissioner said he would do, that he would look into this and he would get back to the committee, and if he saw smoke, he would assume there was fire. We asked him to, he said he would. I see no reason to move in a direction like this motion. Give him the time that he needs. I can't remember what he said, but he's received the information. He's received the information that we couldn't talk about on Thursday until it was translated and sent to committee, which caused a very long suspension in the committee. But it was important to get that stuff out so all committee members had a chance to have that in English and to have that in French. And that was submitted, that was translated, that was absorbed by the committee members. We saw that the minister couldn't possibly have made texts or phone calls at that particular time in Vancouver at a cabinet retreat where they were locked down on the day that the Queen died. So I think that it's important that we let the commissioner do the work that he is tasked with doing on our behalf. And we should continue moving in that direction rather than continue talking about bringing in regular Canadians and put them in front and grill them over their business practices in this room. Give the Ethics Commissioner the time to do that. We can review this pretty quickly. The minister said very clearly, many, many times during that 1 hour, that it wasn't him that made the texts or the phone calls. He came, he was as unequivocal as any minister I've ever seen at committee. He wasn't wishy-washy, he was solid. He said it wasn't him. Clearly that wasn't good enough for the Conservatives. I don't know what kind of substantiation they need. Innocent till proven guilty. We already heard from Stephen Anderson. He's quoted right, if we're taking the global news story as being the genesis of this entire fabricated scandal, we heard from Stephen Anderson. He's right in the global news article saying it was not the minister. But Conservatives aren't willing to accept that the global news article is accurate in that particular case. Mr. Chair, I think most of the things that I'd still like to say were said by Lloyd, who I would just be repeating the important things that he said. So I would say I'm going to cede my time now and hear from the next speaker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Monsieur Désolé, j'avais Monsieur Villemur prochain.
Sorry, I had Mr. Villemur next on the list. You can take this opportunity to speak to the committee about the motion that's before us. Would you like to do that? Yes, I'm ready for that. Listen, we're going to table an amendment to the motion that would slightly change the proposal, soften it a little bit. That is the motion that we have between our hands, and the objective is to try to find a consensus. The amendment would delete the word each, delete points C and D, and the last paragraph. So I don't know if you wish for me to read the amendment or send it to the clerk. Yes, I believe it was sent to the clerk. You have it in both languages? Have you shared it with the members of the committee? Do I have it also? All right. Mr. Villemur has proposed an amendment. Just a second, please. It changes the motion.
Media reports Minister Randy Boissonneau's testimony at this committee and the Ethics Commissioner's confirmation that he's considering opening another investigation into Minister Randy Boissonneau's actions. The committee call on the following witnesses to appear before the committee individually and testify for no less than 1 hour each. And that would strike C, which is the representatives of the Gowie Group, D, the other Randy referred to in Minister Boissonneau's testimony, that would strike that part of it, and that it would also strike that these witnesses appear on or before June 18th, and that the committee seek additional resources to facilitate these meetings if needed. So that is the l'amendement qui était proposé.
That's the amendment that was proposed by Mr. Desilets. If you wish to make comments on the amendment to Mr. Desilets, I'll give you the floor, and then I'll let others speak to it. Yeah, there are two changes that didn't appear. There are three changes that we wanted to make. C and D, of course, would be deleted. We'd remove those witnesses. We could increase the amount of 1 hour. We could talk about at least an hour instead of saying each. So we're removing the word each through this amendment. The last paragraph would be removed, as would be the word each, as well as the last two witnesses, as you mentioned. That doesn't seem to us to be relevant. And of course, we can add more time if we need it.
Okay, merci.
Thank you, Mr. Desilets.
Mr. Green, I had him first on the amendment, Mr. Green, and then Ms. Damoff, you rose your hand. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Forgive me, I'm going to seek your indulgence on this. I was pretty sure, perhaps it's a previous motion, there's been a lot of them at this committee, that I have already amended some of this language out, particularly as it relates to additional resources. Did that not occur? Oh, or if not, then I would just go on the record and state that I have no intention of providing you or anybody arbitrarily infinite resources and infinite dates to be able to deal with this matter. I certainly want to address this matter. I want to address it within our calendar sitting days, regularly scheduled meetings, without additional resources, without this ability to arbitrarily call meetings. I'll go on the record and state emphatically that I believe it is the common courtesy amongst committee to have a subcommittee that plans work and not have it be at the call of the chair. I've stated that in many different occasions. From my perspective, I am very comfortable calling in the witnesses on a day together over 2 hours. They can do their opening statements. We can ask questions to whomever we see fit. I'm very keenly interested in that. I've expressed as much in conversations with all parties. But what I'm not looking for is turning this into a never-ending story that becomes, meeting upon meeting and is a reflection of the current filibuster we seem to find ourselves in. So that's my position on this. And I would move that that we do a sub-amendment on this amendment that strikes that last line around infinite resource or resources, additional resources as available. It seems to be a new conservative catchphrase. We're going to go ahead and get rid of that and have it be for existing scheduled meetings before the House rises.
So just to address the point on the sub-amendment, Mr. Green, the amendment that was proposed by Mr. Desilets at the end of it says 1 hour, he strikes each, at least 1 hour of testimony. Then A and B stays. It deletes C and D, and then it deletes that last line. And it's that last line that you're referring to, correct?
Okay, my apologies.
Yeah.
Maybe it was, something got lost in translation there, but I am firmly against having the ability to call meetings at your will. I like you, John, but I just don't want to give you that much power. And I'd prefer to, have consultations with parties, particularly on the opposition side, or have the ability to at least have some input into our schedule.
Okay.
So
does that clarify things for you?
may you please, just for my indulgence, and then I'll be satisfied, just reread it as amended?
Okay, so here, this is the amendment, or the amendment as proposed by Monsieur Desilets, okay? That in light of media reports, Minister Randy Boissonnault's testimony at this committee and the Ethics Commissioner's confirmation that he is considering opening another investigation into Minister Randy Boissonnault's actions, the committee call on the following witnesses to appear before the committee individually and testify for no less than 1 hour, and testify for no less than 1 hour and at least 1 hour, Stefan Anderson and Kristen Poon. That's how Mr. Desilets' amendment reads right now.
Oh, he took out the Gowie folks?
He took out the Gowie folks and the other Randy as referred to in Minister Boissonnault's testimony. So
I'd love to hear from the other Randy if the other Randy exists.
Okay.
I'll just go on the record and state that.
Okay. So at least for at least 1 hour, I think where the confusion lies here, Ms. Khalid, and I hear what you're saying, the committee individually and testify for at least 1 hour. Okay.
Fair enough.
Right.
Thank you for that. I'm in full support of the amendment.
Let me clarify.
Even though
this.
I would like to hear from the Gowies, but I mean, maybe we'll save that for another day.
Okay. Monsieur Desilets, just pour clarification.
Mr. Desilets, just for clarification, the motion, or rather the amendment we received, that the motion be amended by deleting the words each and by deleting points C and D, but you spoke about 1 hour each, but you must clarify for the committee what you would like. Well, I think what would be simpler is to get rid of the word individually and testify for 1 hour, period. Inaudible. Or the two witnesses for 1 hour, if you'd like it to be even more specific. Inaudible. Just to clarify then.
And testify for no less than 1 hour. C'est correct, ça?
Oui.
Oui? Okay.
Yes. Yes, all right.
I think that actually clears it up, huh? I'll get the clerk to send it out, but it's a fairly minor change to the amendment. And Matt, I also want to address the other point you brought up about the amendment that you proposed. If you recall, that motion was put forward by Mr. Barrett. The amendment that you spoke about, we had adjourned debate, and then we continued again, and Mr. Barrett had proposed a different motion than the one that was proposed. So the debate actually adjourned on Mr. Barrett's motion and then your amendment on it as well. And then it was picked up again when Mr. Barrett proposed his new motion. So that's how we ended up in this place.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. So
It's feeling like Groundhog Day, but fair enough. Thank you.
you should walk in my shoes, Mr. Green. Okay. Okay. The clerk, le Gaffrey va envoyer.
The clerk will send to the committee the changes to the amendment by Mr. Desilets. We'll continue with the speaking list on the amendment.
I'm going to read it into the record. The committee call on the following witnesses to appear before the committee and to testify for no less than 1 hour. That's really the.
I don't think that's what we discussed, Chair.
For at least 1 hour? Is that what?
No, I think you said for 1 hour.
Or for 1 hour? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So.
And not individually. I think individually was removed. That's why I'd like
Right.
to see it in writing
Right.
so that none of us
Okay.
have any confusion about it.
Okay, so, again, I'm just going to read it out. Witnesses to appear before the committee and testify for no less than 1 hour.
No, Chair.
Why am I still seeing that then?
No,
To testify in front of the committee
for 1 hour.
for 1 hour?
Yes.
Okay.
And not, and also to
Okay.
delete individually, I believe.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
I've got
Sekwe?
that. So that's where the confusion was, because it was stricken in the last part of it, but it wasn't stricken in the one, just before 1 hour. So I'm just going to read it out again. Following witnesses to appear before the committee and testify for 1 hour. Stefan Anderson and Christian Poon. Correct? Ça c'est l'amendement de Monsieur Désiré.
That's Mr. Dizzy's amendment. Okay.
Paper right here. So, okay, on va continuer avec,
We'll continue with Ms. Damoff.
on the amendment proposed
Yep.
by Mr. Désiré.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I want to thank my block colleague for bringing this forward. And like his counterpart, Mr. Villemure, who is truly one of the most ethical people that I've met in Parliament. And I don't say that lightly, but he is. I want to thank you for bringing this forward. We will support it, especially with the changes that have been clarified, that the two witnesses are coming together for 1 hour. I will say that I share Mr. Green's concerns about a meeting being scheduled outside of our regular time, which isn't reflected in this motion. So I just want to put that on the record, because this committee does have a habit of just having meetings, which is the chair's prerogative, and I acknowledge that. It's just unlike any other committee I've been on where there's no conversation with other parties in scheduling meetings. So I don't want to see this meeting scheduled on July the 21st or, some day in the middle of the summer. So I don't know if my colleague wants to add anything to that effect. But I think the intent was that this be held during our regular sitting time. I'm just looking for clarity to see, or maybe we just leave it. It's not a hill I'm going to die on, but I do just want to get on the record that I agree with Mr. Green that we should be having consultation from the chair with the other parties before meetings are scheduled. So, like I said, I'm not going to propose an amendment because I do appreciate what the bloc has put forward here, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Damo. I'm going to address the issue that you brought up about meetings. The committee is going to will recall back in April. We actually sent out, was it April, Madam Clerk, that we sent out the meeting schedule based on the motions that had been proposed?
I don't remember the date.
It was sometime back in April. And there was a game plan that was indicated in the meeting schedule of what meetings we're going to have on what days based on the motions that were proposed. There's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of motions being moved, a lot of very dynamic and fluid situation on this committee that I've been trying to get through. The analysts have written a report on the data collection and information tools that we've been trying to get to too. Now, unfortunately, there's no way that we're going to end up presenting that report to Parliament before this session is over. So that game plan was actually shared with the committee back in April. Specific dates, specific studies, specific meetings, not necessarily with specific witnesses, but it was shared with the committee. And so what I've been trying to do, and we've had extreme difficulty in doing this because of motions that have been moved, et cetera, and that's the right of every member to do that, is to try to work within that game plan. Unfortunately, we haven't. So that was shared with all members of the committee back in April. So any sense or thought that somehow we're trying to, or I'm trying to have meetings that haven't been scheduled, with the exception of one, and that was the one on the Thursday when we were going to start the Winnipeg Lab document study. We had the information commissioner that was here for one opportunity. The other two witnesses were, one was on the list, the other wasn't, but it's a current president of PHAC. We had them come in on that time because we were running out of runway, frankly, on all of the other dates that we had put on that schedule. So any thought that somehow look, there's nothing I hate more than coming in on an off week, but my job, in conjunction with the clerk and the analyst, is to ensure that this committee functions and that we have meetings. That game plan was laid out in April. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to meet up with it. So if you go back to April, it was shared by the clerk to all members of the committee exactly what those meetings were going to be. So, Ms. Khalid, on Monsieur Désilé's amendment, please, on the amendment. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair. And if you want to schedule tomorrow's meeting for that report, I think we can pass that report tomorrow, but I leave that to your discretion. I share the concerns that Ms. Damloff has raised. I know silly season is upon us, and I also know that each and every one of us have very important work to do in our constituencies over the summer. So I want to also register my concern about the perceived or the lack thereof urgency of what we're discussing here. And not its importance, Chair, its urgency. And I think that that we leave it in your good hands to ensure that we are judicious with how members spend their times over the summer. I, for one, have been away from my constituents for a very long time, and I would really like to spend as much time with them and listen to their concerns as possible. Chair, over the past 2 meetings, we have been discussing this motion that's been presented. There's obviously a lot of grandstanding, a lot of partisan politics being played with this, not to take away from the importance of what is transparency, of what is what we need to do as the Ethics Committee. And so I think the amendment that has been proposed by Monsieur Villemur through Monsieur Désilé is fair. And I also am willing to support this amendment. Again, I will not propose any further amendments with respect to timing because I trust you, Chair, to have that judiciousness in scheduling the meeting when you do, if you do, and I appreciate that. But I think that this amendment really helps take the majority of the partisan nature out of the original motion. It brings the issue in a condensed way to our committee. We are, like as Mr. Fisher had said, we are not a judiciary. We are not here to cancel people on social media. We are here to look into the role specifically for what the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics is to do. And, if it is the will of the committee or the majority of the committee to look at this issue, then so be it. And I think the majority of our challenge has been to take the partisan politics out of it. And I am quite frankly concerned, Chair. I have faced a lot of the backlash that comes out of that partisanness. I have seen other witnesses be dragged before this committee, and them having dealt with a lot of hate, a lot of backlash on social media, and I'm also very concerned about who we bring to this committee, whether they're actually applicable, like whether the lobbying act or the conflict of interest code is actually applicable to them or not. So I think we really need to understand what it is that we are doing here and why we are doing it. Is it the minister who is responsible, regardless of what accusations are made, where they're made? Should we be bringing in people from the industry, from just private citizens, hauling them before the committee and defaming them? I don't think that this is fair, Chair. I think that we need to be a lot more careful. So I'm looking at this amendment and I am contemplating it. I think this amendment takes some of that partisan grandstanding out of the motion. And I think that we as a committee need to also think about how we treat witnesses that come before this committee. And we need to think about what the consequences are of when witnesses come before this committee. And I think that we need to be, as committee members, a lot more judicious, a lot more careful in who we bring here, why we bring them, and we should really refrain from using private citizens as props for political grandstanding. So I'll park my comments here, Chair, and I am cautiously accepting of this amendment. I'm still mulling over what I'm going to do with the main motion, but I am cautiously accepting of this amendment, and I am hoping that I'll hear from some of my opposition colleagues as to where they stand on the issues that have been raised by myself and by my colleagues on these concerns with respect to not just the motion, but the amendment as well. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Khalid. I don't have any other speakers on I do now. I have Mr. Barrett. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett, please. On the amendments.
Yeah, so on the amendment that takes out the other Randy, the subject of great interest, this other Randy, and the Gowrie Group. So I guess the curiosity that I have is members opposite, Liberal members, have said that they don't want to drag citizens in front of the committee, but these two people are certainly citizens. And the 50% of the amendment removes other Randy. So what is the protection of this other individual that they're looking to achieve? So we have someone who's named in these texts, Randy, working at Randy Boissonneau's company. And when Mr. Anderson was asked if there was another Randy, he said that he did work with one, but he wouldn't say what their name was, but that they were head of logistics. It's highly suspicious, to say the least, that Randy Boissonneau owns 50% of this company, but can't tell us who the other Randy is that works for him at a small company. And his partner, his co-founder, also won't say who other Randy is. And it strikes me as a bit disingenuous, to say the least, that the Liberal members are saying, well, we don't just, we're not just...
Chair?
Go ahead on your point of order.
Thanks, Chair. I'll remind the member that this amendment was not moved by Liberal members. It was moved by Bloc members.
That's not a point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
So I'm happy to reacquaint members with what procedure and practice says, and that's not a point of order, but first days are tough for everyone. I understand that. So we have Liberal members who are saying that they don't just want to bring members of the public before the committee, but they're going to vote for an amendment that does that. That seems really weird. Just like they say one thing and do another. quite often. Like they say that, well, Canada has the strictest, most stringent conflict of interest rules. Yeah, they break those rules all the time. It's a cabinet of serial lawbreakers. They routinely break the law and then say, well, we broke the law, we got caught, we'll move on. They just completely disregard the rules. And in this case, it seems like they're looking for the same thing to be accepted, that, the minister comes before committee, yeah, I'll give you all my phone records. Okay, I'll accept that we got all the phone records from the minister if he only has one cell phone. If he writes to the clerk and says, yep, I do commit that I only have one cell phone, and that's why I only gave you records for one cell phone. I don't possess one. I haven't used another one since I've been minister. Well, maybe. But again, I don't believe that this is it. He gave us some call records and then said, well, not only that, I couldn't have used it because I was in lockdown. They keep saying they're in lockdown. There was no lockdown. They were in a meeting and their phones were in a box outside the meeting. And when they took breaks and when they had their lunch, they took their phones out of the box. And it's ridiculous. They're trying to say one thing when they know another thing to be true. So my question to all members, to my colleagues in the other opposition parties as well, would be, what satisfaction can we get with respect to the question of the other Randy? So would a sub-amendment that had GHI provide a complete list of their staff names, or specifically just the name of their head of logistics whose first name is Randy, would they be amenable to that? That we don't need to hear from other Randy, we just need confirmation of other Randy's existence, and then to hear from Minister Boissonneau's partner. Is that an amendment, a sub-amendment that would be well received by them? Because then that, of course, achieves the stated, well, part of the stated goal of the Liberals, who said they don't want to bring individuals before the committee, even though they're still going to support this amendment that calls for two, just not other Randy. So far we've only had one Randy come before committee, and it's most likely that he is in fact the other Randy. But let's have the discussion about having Global Health Imports provide to the committee in writing the first and last name of this individual. I think that will answer a number of questions. Of course, it's not wholly satisfactory. This individual should come before the committee. That's why it's in the motion that was put forward. But I think that it gets us part of the way there. And I'm a big compromise guy, so let's compromise on that. And so I'm curious if that would find favor with the other opposition members, because though Liberal members may vote for the amendment, the indication is that they may vote against the main motion. So let's find something that satisfies our obligation as the opposition in terms of accountability. To my colleagues in the other opposition parties, would you support a sub-amendment, or on passing the amendment, amending the motion to have GHI, Global Health Initiatives, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Boissonneau's company, provide the full name of the head of logistics who is styled as other Randy?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. I'm not hearing you propose that as a sub-amendment, but I do have a list. I had Mr. Brock and then Mr. Green right after. So, Mr. Brock, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I can be,
on the amendment, sir.
yeah, I can be brief, Mr. Chair. I wholeheartedly agree with my colleague, Mr. Barrett's suggestions to the other opposition members. And I just want to clarify a couple of loose threads that I think need to be focused in. Canadians watching this may be left with the impression that there's really nothing to see here, that Global News had conducted a most thorough investigation on their own, and the Liberal bench, including the Prime Minister, has satisfied all the queries that opposition members have made on this issue. But this is a serious matter. And to Mr. Barrett's point, I know that good governance and high ethical standards is a very elusive concept for this NDP Liberal government. But it's not for Canadians. And the allegations are really damning that a minister who had been a minister for close to a year is communicating via a device to a company demanding within so many minutes a $500,000 payment to a company that he still has a 50% interest in. The text message made it clear that there ought to be a partners meeting. Minister Boissonnault confirmed that he views himself as a partner. This was a two-partner company. What concerns me is that the Liberal bench can clear this up, could have cleared this up the moment the issue rose by simply identifying the surname of this other Randy. And it just amazes me to the length by which the Liberal government will go to conceal the identity of this other Randy. And for the Canadians who are watching this, they're saying to themselves, well, what's the big deal? If it's not Minister Boissonnault, then identify the person. But when you've got every Liberal member literally on this committee, as well as Liberal members in the House, dodging and deflecting and not answering the question that's on the mind of Canadians, clear this up. Why are we wasting government resources and arguing this, and with filibustering that's happening not only today, but happening last week as well? Government, or Canadians want government to work. And when they see the kind of gamemanship that's happening right now, and the attempts to not shed any sort of transparency and light on this, is extremely concerning. And to answer the question of Mr. Fisher, that this committee has never been designed to be a judge and jury, well, of course not. But our role as parliamentarians is to ask the tough questions. Some of us could have more skills than others in asking the questions, probing questions that might ultimately elicit a response from a commissioner and or provide the basis by which we would extend an invitation to law enforcement to investigate. But that's our role, Mr. Chair. That's what we do day in and day out at committee. It is improper to equate that lawful parliamentary privilege and process as a means of acting as judge and jury. That's just not the case. What's also concerning is in the Global News report that Mr. Boissonnault's other partner lied, flat out deliberately lied when he said that the other Randy is the head of logistics. The report indicated, in fact, the head of logistics was Mr. Anderson's father, whose first name was not Randy. Now, we're not talking about a large corporation. We're not talking about a multinational. We're talking about a small startup company with maybe one or two other employees. When asked by the Global News reporter, give us the surname of the other Randy, no one in that organization could answer that. In much the same way that every Liberal member of this committee and this government refused to give us the name of that person. And that's why we are here. That's why I fully support Mr. Barrett's recommendation that we need to have the other Randy appear and or have the government provide us with the surname so that we can
Point of
make our
order,
own
Chair.
inquiries.
I believe the member is to be speaking to the amendment that's on the floor.
I
and
have.
both he and I'm speaking, Mr. Brock, and both he and Mr. Barrett talk about possible sub-amendments, but there haven't been any put forward. So should he not be speaking to the amendment as opposed to imaginary sub-amendments that they don't seem to want to move?
Well, it's their prerogative, Ms. Damoff, to move a sub-amendment if they choose to, or speak on the amendment, which I believe they are. If at the appropriate time they want to move that sub-amendment, they can. But I don't think that I don't think they're talking in theory here. They're just talking about the amendment. So,
but they're not, Chair. They're talking about how they would like to amend it, but they don't actually amend it. So shouldn't they keep their comments to the amendment that's on
the amendment is to strike the other Randy referred to in Minister Randy Boissonneau's testimony. And I think it's extremely relevant, and you've been on this committee for a while. You know that I give members a lot of latitude. I think it's extremely relevant to be speaking to the amendment that's on the floor, which I believe Mr. Brock is doing at this point. So I'm going to ask Mr. Brock to continue, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And the last intervention is just proof positive that they don't want to hear from Conservative members who are asking the appropriate questions that Canadians want answers to. The other concern that I have with the proposed amendment is the duration of this meeting. The original motion had individuals appearing for 1 hour each. So let's take a look at the logistics behind the passing of the amended motion. The passing of the amended motion would give every member of this committee 1 hour with 2 key witnesses. And their evidence, as I've indicated already, is far more important to Canadians and far more reaching than what the Global News reporter had asked. And the Global News reporter had simply asked, what's the surname of the other Randy? There is a multitude of other probing, relevant questions that need to be put to both Ms. Poon and Mr. Anderson. But this amended motion deprives us a fulsome opportunity, Mr. Chair, to ask those probing, relevant questions. Because let's look at logistics with possibly 2 opening statements of 5 minutes each and an opening round of 6 minutes each for each member. We're at 34 minutes. Another 15 minutes for a second round, possibly another 15 for a full third round. And that's presupposing we don't have translation issues, that we don't have interventions, that we don't have points of order. You know it does not move like clockwork, Chair. So ultimately, at best, we might have 3 rounds for 2 highly relevant, important witnesses. And I'm strongly suggesting that we reconsider that 1 hour and go back to the original motion terms, which had them appearing for 1 hour each. Because quite frankly, Mr. Chair, we're simply going to be scratching the surface with the interventions of 2 key witnesses in 1 hour. Thank you.
Mr. Green, on the amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take debate. I think it's goofy when Conservatives outside of the House of Commons or outside of their question period theatrics refer to an NDP Liberal government when they know full well at this committee I do my work holding the government accountable. But I'll take debate, and I would agree that I too want to find out who this Randy person is. I understand, when my friends from the block want to play a conciliatory role and try to move things along, why they might put water in the wine on this one. But I am still left unsatisfied given the minister's testimony, wholly inadequate. I would consider it to be obstructionist. I would consider it to be at times arrogant, just a basic refusal. And, the quickest thing that could have happened for Mr. Boissonnault, whether he wants to pretend like he knows or doesn't know this person, whether he has one phone or two, that doesn't matter to me. The company in question would have likely watched the testimony, certainly given the interest that the Canadian public has in it. And they could have cleared up in an instance by disclosing this person, in its entirety, really coming clean with Canadians about the nature of this other Randy's contract with the company, their employment there. They haven't. And I would suggest to you that the longer it takes them to do that, the more suspect it seems. So for that reason, I will actually not be supporting this amendment. And I would put a sub-amendment that we do include an invitation formally to the other Randy via the company in question. So that is my sub-amendment. We will find out one way or another if this person exists. If they do, will the real Randy please stand up?
Okay,
that is my sub-amendment.
Mr. Green, I heard you propose a sub-amendment. Now, I can tell you that you did it very, very quickly, so I'm going to need you to say it slowly into the record. So first and foremost, the clerk can interpret what you said, Mr. Green. So please state your sub-amendment again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just formalizing what my Conservative colleagues have pontificated about, and that is a sub-amendment to include a formal invitation to the other Randy Doe, Randy John Doe, I don't know what we want to call him without the surname, to appear before this committee as a part of the witness list. Will that suffice, Mr. Chair?
Hold on.
Would that be included in the different?
So, Mr. Green, thanks for your patience. I just needed some clarification on this. The challenge is that we're on an amendment that deletes effectively what you're proposing. So, what we would need to do is to dispose of the amendment, and then if you wanted to, you could introduce an amendment similar to the one that you are introducing right now. Now, for the benefit of members of the committee, I hope you can understand and appreciate the difficulty of what's being asked here, in the sense that we don't know. The chair nor the clerk knows who the other Randy is. So the difficulty that lies with this is sending out an invitation to somebody who hypothetically could exist or doesn't exist. So that's challenge number one. Challenge number two, just hang on a sec, is I would need clarification, because as the motion reads now, subject to amendment, testify for 1 hour, right? So would the other Randy be asked to testify for an hour with the other witnesses? So that's what we would need clarification on when the time comes to propose an amendment after we dispose of this amendment. So Mr. Barrett, I saw your hand up. I don't know what you were...
Mr. Chair, on that point...
Go, Mr. Green, go.
Yeah, I think that when we're inviting an organization, a company, a registered company, that it would be quite appropriate through the president or the CEO to extend the invitation to demand for certain employees supposedly employed within the context of that company. So I think that would be quite appropriate through to the CEO and the president to extend the invitation to this Randy John Doe character.
It would be completely appropriate. We can try, Mr. Green. There's no guarantee that we will be able to have that happen, but if it's the will of the committee and the committee chooses to invite the other Randy, we will do our best to invite the other Randy. Okay? So we're still on the amendment. I don't see any further discussion on this. So are you still on the amendment, Mr. Barrett?
Yeah, on the amendment.
Okay, go ahead. On the amendment.
I'm just going to turn this off for a second, move it.
Okay.
So we have, so there's obviously an interest in not, by some members, in not removing both the Gowrie Group representative and the other Randy. And I know that the timing of the meeting is something that members want to be able to perhaps prescribe, and the duration of the meeting is of interest, so that this isn't a multi-day event. To Mr. Brock's point, if it's 60 minutes and we have 3 witnesses on the one panel, and potentially 15 minutes of opening statements, that would be a challenge in terms of productivity. We'll have spent many orders of magnitude more in terms of effort of making the meeting happen than we will in expending during the meeting itself. So the question of supporting the amendment, I guess we heard from Mr. Green, and I appreciate his response. And I'm just wondering, through you, Chair, if my colleague from the block would like to speak to what his interest is in terms of, look, we support a 2-hour meeting. We support it occurring within the regularly scheduled rubric of meetings for the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy, and Ethics. We understand that should the clerk extend an invitation to the organization for the individual who's identified as Randy, who is responsible for logistics, if they come back and say, I can't help you with that, well, thus exhausts the clerk's ability to do that. She's executed on the will of the committee, and then it comes back to us, and we decide how we would like to proceed. It doesn't. I don't think it further advances our cause to then issue a summons for someone for whom we don't have a last name or coordinates for that person. But I guess that would be something for the committee to consider at the time. So through you, Chair, to my colleague from the block, I just wonder if there is a willingness to advance the issue. If the question is removing the Gowrie Group, well, we could support that. That's obviously not our preference, but we could accept that as an amendment to resolve the discussion, and have Mr. Anderson and Ms. Poon, who are in the amendment, but to leave the invitation to the other Randy in, and for it to occur over 2 hours during a regularly scheduled meeting of the committee, just as one witness panel for the 2 hours. Then it's not a multi-day affair, and we put the issue to rest. So I just wanted to give the opportunity for my colleague just to hear him. I want to hear him out if he's interested. And I had spoken to Mr. Velmure to that effect prior to the meeting, and he seemed to think that was interesting. And I'm just curious if his colleague is of the same view, if he's interested in responding, and I appreciate that. Through you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. Typically, questions of other committee members are not asked, but je veux donner si Monsieur Desilets.
If Mr. Desilets wishes to speak, I have nobody else on the speakers list. So if Mr. Desilets wants to speak to the amendment, or what was just discussed regarding the amendment? I'll give you the chance to do that now. Yes, well, Mr. Chair, I believe my amendment was quite clear. We were going to, for now, get rid of those two or delete the reference to those two last witnesses. Well, that means we can still ask somebody else to appear, other witnesses to appear later. We're in a hypothetical situation here, but right now I have a clear amendment on the table. I'd like to either, we can get rid of the amendment or move forward with it. We're really on the amendment. There's no sub-amendment. I don't really see where the discussion is leading us right now. Thank you, Mr. Desilets. I don't have anybody on the speakers list for the amendment. So do we have unanimous consent to pass the amendment? No? No unanimous consent? Madam Clerk, could you please proceed to a vote? On the amendment. The vote is on Mr. Desilets' amendment. Mr. Baines.
Yes.
Ms. Damoff.
Yes.
Mr. Fisher. Mr. Longfield.
Yes.
Ms. Khalid.
Yes.
Mr. Barrett.
No.
Mr. Brock.
No.
Mr. Pazzer.
No.
Monsieur Desilets.
Wait.
Mr. Green.
No.
Yeas 6 pour 6, nays 4, contre 4.
Okay, so the amendment carries. We're back to the main motion as amended. Is there any other discussion on this? I see Mr. Barrett. Go ahead, sir.
So I just want to get an understanding, Chair. Let me pull up the motion as amended here. Does the motion dictate in its most current form the duration of the meeting?
My understanding in looking at the motion, our understanding, because I've clarified this with the clerk, is that both witnesses would be here for 1 hour at a time when we're able to get them here.
That in.
Yeah, and just to clarify, 1 hour for the two together. So that's the way our interpretation of the motion reads, and I think that's been explained.
I'd just like to move an amendment.
Okay.
That the motion be amended after the word hour to add the word each.
Okay. Yeah, again, I needed clarification on this, Mr. Barrett. So the motion as amended was for 1 hour for both witnesses. The original motion had each in it, and that was amended, and the amendment was accepted. So I can't accept your amendment to have them each here for an hour when we've already disposed of that. So, okay, go ahead.
Do you have anyone else before I continue? No? Okay.
No, go ahead.
So I'd like to offer a further amendment then, Chair. After B, so after it would read Kirsten Poon, and then the motion would read and that the committee order Global Health Imports to submit the names of all past and present employees in order to reveal the identity of the other Randy referred to by Minister Randy Boissonnault within 7 days of this motion being adopted.
So that would add a C, right? A, B, C?
No, I don't believe so, Chair.
No?
I think that it would, because it would read, because it says the following witnesses to appear before the committee and testify for 1 hour, A, B, and then as a new paragraph, it would say, and that. And I'll send that text, as I read it, to the clerk right now.
Okay, so, yeah, you're right. It would not add a C. It would be a separate sentence at the bottom of the proposed motion. Just hang on a sec. Have you sent that yet, Mr.?
I did.
Okay, so it's been distributed. Can you just do me a favor? Just read it out again, Mr. Barrett, if you don't mind, so that everybody's clear on this.
So the amendment is following the name Kirsten Poon, a new paragraph that reads, and that the committee order Global Health Imports to submit the names of all past and present employees in order to reveal the identity of the other Randy referred to by Minister Randy Boissonnault within 7 days of the motion being adopted.
Okay, I think that's pretty clear. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Ms. Khalid, on the amendment, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering if we can suspend for a bit while I confer with my colleagues.
Yeah,
Yeah, can we at least suspend while it's coming in writing? Chair?
okay, so I'm going to suspend for a couple of minutes here. It should be sent any minute now, so let's get back in a couple of minutes, okay? So meeting suspended for a couple of minutes.
information that businesses are not to disclose.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Longfield. The amendment has been shared with you. I've got you down, Ms. Khalid. Go ahead.
I'm just seeking some clarification with respect to this amendment, and I'm wondering if it would violate labor law.
I don't know. On what basis would you make that argument?
Given that that there's privacy concerns with respect to former employees or current employees, et cetera, I am not a labor law expert. I know that some members on this committee are very experienced litigators. Perhaps they would have better knowledge. But I think it's very important for us to clarify this before we move forward with this amendment.
Yeah, I'm not the adjudicator of whether it constitutes anything against labor law. I think the committee can pretty much, if it deems it appropriate and deems it its will, can pretty much ask anything. Then it would be up to the committee, or not up to the committee, but it'd be up to the employer at that point to determine whether in fact it does constitute a breach of labor law, or they can simply redact information, and then the committee at that point can determine which direction it wants to go. So that's my initial assessment on where things are at. But the committee is a master of its own domain. It can ask anything it wants of anyone or any corporation or any business. If they choose to provide that information, that's up to them. If they don't, then that's up to them as well.
But that's also the question, Chair. I think the objective of this motion or this amendment is to get the information in, right? It is not to ask the question, it's to receive the information. And I'm then also wondering what would happen if the company comes back to us and says that nope, sorry, this violates labor law. What position would the committee be in that instance then? So I'm curious. Like, I obviously want the work that we do to be effective and to be efficient in the best of our capacity.
Okay.
I know that we don't have a lot of days left here in this sitting, so I'm just asking those questions, Chair, hoping that we can get some answers, because ultimately I think what we're trying to do here is to get to an understanding of what has occurred with this Globe article, and the reason why we're adding, or from my understanding, that we're adding this particular amendment after we have talked at length for what the amended motion as presented has been, is one of two things. Either the other folks here were just a front to get to this other Randy and sensationalizing or grandstanding or whatever the objectives the Conservatives may have on this, or in reality to try to understand what exactly has happened here. It's one or the other. So I'm trying to understand what would happen, like what is the practical implication of this amendment to this motion. I mean, we're basically asking a company to give up all of their records of all previous employees, all current employees, and, you know, like if the Conservatives would have it, perhaps all future employees too, to get to what seems to be a little bit of a witch hunt, in my opinion, as to who this Randy is, and what happens if there's multiple Randys on this list. What happens if there's, somebody named Randeep that may go by Randy, or so many other instances on this. I think that this is not the most efficient way for us to conduct our business here. I think the best way for us to really go forward is to maybe have what is currently the amended motion as it stands now, and say, all right, you know what, let's see if there's something to sniff here, and then go from there. But at this point, and I've said this before, Mr. Chair, and I'll say it again, I don't think that what we're trying to do here is to achieve anything of real work. I think what we're trying to do here is to grandstand, is to create scandals, and it is to witch hunt and go after people that may or may not exist, God knows, and to create a target on people's backs. And quite frankly, Chair, I've been a victim of that myself, and I don't think it's something that we should be putting civilians up for this at all. I think that we need to be very, very judicious in how we conduct ourselves in this committee and who we call before this committee, Chair, and what kind of documents we have that we bring or order to be produced before this committee. And I think that we do need to take into account what the practical implications of such an amendment would be. I think we need to take into account and perhaps preempt or think about, at the very least, what a private company would have to go through to release private information of theirs of all former employees and all current employees, et cetera, et cetera. So I really would hope that we can be a little bit more judicious in what kind of amendments we're proposing. I would really hope that we would not partake in political grandstanding, in trying our very best to defame people in the House. And I really am quite humbled and honored, Chair, to serve as a member of Parliament. And I take my responsibilities very seriously, and including the privilege that we're given in which we are honorable and that our words are not supposed to be questioned. And I think that members here need to remember that as well, and ensure that we are being honest, ensure that we are working to the best of our ability to do the work that Canadians send us here to do, not to sensationalize things, not to create scandals out of something. I think that we really need to get back on track, Mr. Chair, and I'm hoping, again, I know I keep saying this again and again, I'm really hoping that we can find a way to build consensus in this committee. I'm really hoping that we can find a way to get some real work done. Chair, I know I've said this before as well. I was quite disappointed in not being able to complete the study that I had put forward, that we had spent a lot of resources on as well.
Hey, Ms. Khalid, I'm going to have to cut you off there, unfortunately. We are running out of resources, but before we do go, I did look this up, and I just for the clarity of the members of the committee, the standing orders do not delimit the power to order the production of papers and records. The result is broad, absolute power that on the surface appears to be without restriction. There is no limit to the type of papers likely to be requested. The only prerequisite is that the papers exist in hard copy or electronic format and that they are located in Canada. They can be papers originating from or in the possession of governments, or papers the authors or owners of which are from the private sector or civil society associations, organizations, etc. I have a list, and we will continue tomorrow with Ms. Khalid, Mr. Green, Mr. Barrett, Longfellow, and Desailly. We're suspended until tomorrow.